Good Shabbos, good afternoon, and as we prepare to get ready for the Shabbos of Parshas Ekev, today we will look at today's Torah reading and have a few snippets from today's Torah reading which discusses, as we continue in the book of Deuteronomy, Moshe reminding the Jewish people of how they're going to behave when they walk into the land of Israel and how their relationship with God can only get better. Over here today, Moshe in this week's Torah reading reminds them of episodes that have happened to the Jewish people throughout their 40 years in the desert. And he focuses on a few episodes that we're going to touch upon today, namely the sin of the golden calf and the fact that they were fed and how they survived throughout the 40 years in the desert. The name of the Torah reading is called Ekev. Ekev literally means heel. And the commentaries tell us, what does it mean that Moshe tells the Jewish people? The word Ekev can also mean because. But over here, the dual translation of Moshe telling the Jewish people that the very fact that there are certain commandments that we sometimes neglect, we put our heel on it. We don't give it much attention. It's not so grandiose. And over here, Moshe tells us that every single commandment that God gives us is of equal importance. But also it symbolizes something even greater. Ekev means the heel right before the coming of Mashiach. That every single mitzvah counts in order to bring about that coming of Mashiach. The heels. How are we going to bring about that coming of Mashiach is when we don't neglect, but we understand and appreciate every single thing for its value. But let's go a little step further. Moshe now tells the Jewish people and reminds them about the episodes of that happened throughout the 40 years. And one of the things he touches upon is about the manna. That the Jewish people, as we know, for 40 years did not have bread coming from the ground as they were traveling through the desert. They had bread that came from heaven, which we call manna. And Moshe uses a terminology, Vayancha vayidivecha, and I pained you and I starved you, and I gave you this man. Why was it a pain? Why was it starvation? We know that the Jewish people complained about the manna if they wanted a change in the menu. But at the same time, they also said it was like honey, it was delicious, any taste that they wanted. That means if a person imagined it to be any type of flavor or taste, they were able to have that in the manna. Bread from heaven without any work. Why should they complain? And the commentaries explain because, number one, you ever go to a restaurant and the lights are really, really dark, or you're at home, those that are still dealing with the blackouts from the hurricane and have no power and eating when it's dark, you don't eat as much. Your food doesn't taste as good when you don't see what you're eating. You may have a flavor, a taste in your mind, but it's not going to taste the same. It's not going to have the same appreciation as if when you actually taste it and see it. So number one, why was it painful? Because they're having all these flavors, but at the same time, they still can't appreciate the flavor to its fullest because since they don't see it. But more so. You go to sleep at night, you know you can go to the grocery and get another loaf of bread. You can buy some fruit and vegetables. But what happens, let's say during the beginning of the pandemic, when people were scared there wasn't going to be anything in the store shelves, all of a sudden there was panic ensued. What happened? People were scared, not for today. Today they had plenty to eat. For tomorrow, for the next day. When the Jewish people were getting the manna from the heaven, it was beautiful at the moment. But what happened the next day? They weren't sure they were going to get it. So there was a certain sense of starvation that was within them because though they had food right now, but they didn't know what would come tomorrow. Though for the past 20 years, 30 years, and even 35, 39 years, they've received it, but things can always change, who knows? And therefore, there was a certain type of starvation and never proper satiation. But this doesn't only come into a story, but there's also a practical application. Moshe is telling the Jewish people not just history, but also pragmatic advice for the future. That when the Jewish people are going to come into the land of Israel, there's going to be an evil inclination that's going to try to persuade them not to believe in God, to claim independence. While they were in the desert, they were absolutely dependent on God. But the moment they come into the land of Israel, they can think, look, I sowed, I plowed, I achieved, I'm a self-made man, I don't need God anymore. In fact, the first thing that the evil inclination comes along to say is it starts with the baby steps. First, the evil inclination says, you know what, maybe the menu is not good. It doesn't taste the same. Let me try something differently. And eventually it climbs and says, once it gets you convinced and starts listening, it starts persuading you to do greater and worse things, as we see with the Jewish people. First they complained about the menu, then they complained about the forbidden relationships. What Moshe is telling the Jewish people is, don't become too smart. Don't think that you have it all worked out. Remember those days while you were in the desert and you weren't satiated because since the food came from heaven, you didn't know what was going to come tomorrow? Guess what? Even when you think you have it all planned out, you still don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Proof in the pudding. Anybody put 2020 on the calendar, look at your schedule that you made last year. How much of it were you able to do? We think we have it all worked out. God sends us a curveball and says, not so quick. Look who's in charge. But then Moshe tells us a little further. And he goes back to the episode of the story of the breaking of the tablets when the Jewish people sinned the golden calf. And Moshe tells the story and says, I came down the mountain and I see that you're sinning with the golden calf. I grabbed the two tablets and I smashed them to the ground. Now, why did he smash those two tablets to the ground? But he adds in another few words. I smashed them to the ground to your eyes. Why to your eyes? What do you mean? And not to whose eyes? What was he assuming with it? What was he saying with it? There's a story told about a Holocaust survivor who was, after the Holocaust, lived through Auschwitz, emigrated to the land of Israel, finally had some peace in his life, but because of he lost his entire family, he decided to leave Judaism and its practices. But when he was in the old country in Germany, he was a faithful chassid of the Ger Rebbe. And he decided that though he is not a practicing Jew anymore, he still wants to go and see his great teacher, still from Germany, who survived the war as well, and visit him in Eretz Yisrael in Israel. So he decided to go to Bnei Brak and visit Rabbi Yisrael of Ger, known as the Beis Yisrael. And he came to him at the point, and they spoke about what just happened just a few years ago, where the Ger Rebbe lost a lot of his family. Majority of his Hasidic dynasties have been gone. And this fellow's talking about his family. And together they cried. And together they cried for 10 minutes, for 15 minutes, for 20 minutes. Until finally the Ger Rebbe looks up at him and he says in Yiddish, Nor far deine Augen. It was only in front of your eyes. Referring back to this week's Torah reading. And he explained them as follows. And he says, over here you see a charismatic leader. You see Moshe. Moshe stands in front of the Jewish people and he sees that they're sinning. They're about to sin, or they have sinned already with the golden calf. God is absolutely finished with them. He said, I'm going to finish them off and you're going to be the future of the Jewish nation. What does Moses do? He takes the two tablets, he grabs it and throws it onto the floor. Smashes it. He doesn't just break it, but he first holds it and then he breaks it. The commentaries explain to us and say, why? Because Moses said if the reason why God's upset at them is because they broke their contract, they broke their marriage contract that they were supposed to serve God, and over here they're serving idols, no marriage contract. But no, he did something even more than that. He grabbed it, he took it for himself. He told the Jewish people, I'm going to take responsibility. He took it and he put his life on the line and he said, it's mine, this tablets, not yours. You don't have to keep the contract. If God is upset, let him be angry with me. Let him take me out of his book. It's God, as he told God, if you want to erase the Jewish people, erase me from the book. Well, Moses personified wasn't what it means to be a leader. Moses personified what it means to stand up for the Jewish people. A leader is not a person who stands in the back, but a leader is one who stands in the front, ready and willing to give his life for the people. That's what Moses did by breaking the two tablets. But then he adds in two words, in before your eyes. This breaking of the tablets only happened before your eyes. And this is what the Ger Rebbe was telling this Holocaust survivor as they were crying together, mourning the destruction of their families. Many times we see episodes in our life. We see many different things, tragedies, travesties, and atrocities. What we must remember, it's only before our eyes. Behind us, in another planet, in another era, in another place, there's a whole different identity, a whole different something else happening. We can't be privy to see what's going on, but it's definitely happening. Moses is telling the Jewish people. Moses is reminding the Jewish people as they enter the land of Israel. I break the tablets in front of your eyes. In front of your eyes, it looks like a destruction. It looks sad. It looks horrible. But that's only what you see. We are not privy to see what's on the other side of the curtain. We don't see what's happening up there in heaven. We don't see the souls on high who are basking in the spirituality, in the holiness by God's feet. We don't see the inner intent of why God does things and why He makes them happen. Yes, it's hard. There's a breaking of the tablets. As the commentaries tell us that every time that a sage or a scholar passes, it's as difficult as the breaking of the tablets. Every Jew that passes is as difficult as the breaking of the tablets. The suffering of human life is as difficult as the breaking of the tablets. But it's only what we see. We don't have that X-ray vision. We don't see what's really going on the other side. We don't understand the reason, the purpose of why things are happening. We live today in a time where we want to know what's going on. People didn't have power for 12 hours, 2 hours, don't have Wi-Fi. All of a sudden, the world's coming to an end. 2 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, everybody should have power. Everybody should have what they need. But all of a sudden, we start making tragedies and we start forgetting about the big picture. We become so tunnel vision in seeing only what I need, how I need to be satisfied. We forget that there's a greater picture and a greater reality. Not only a greater reality that we don't see, but a greater reality that we should become in tune with. And over here, Moses is reminding the Jewish people as they enter the land of Israel. Going into the land of Israel is a place where you're going to get this type of tunnel vision. The moment we work in life and we earn a living and we start accomplishing, we think we are the one, as he started off this week's Torah reading. It's all about the heel. You start stepping on things because you say, I know how to figure it out. I got it all worked out. Remember that tunnel vision that you see, and all of a sudden with all those plans, they go boom, it disappears. But if I have faith in God and I know that there's something beyond it, if I know that there's something I don't see, this is only in front of my eyes, all of a sudden, I have faith. I have no anxiety. I'm rest assured that there's a greater plan, though I don't understand it, though I don't see it. And I won't see it, as Moses tells the Jewish people. In front of your eyes, it's a tragedy, and definitely is. And therefore, we have to take the proper precautions and more, in whatever a case it may be. But at the same time, we must remember, we don't see the full picture. Until that day, that will be blessed, that God will give us the greatest blessing from above, giving us the actual X-ray vision, seeing the world for the purpose it was created. The ultimate reason, making this world a spiritual oasis from God. When the world will identify with godliness, the world will see spirituality. And we will be able to see the subconscious in everything we do and appreciate the godly spirit in whatever we do, appreciating and seeing the godly intuition and having the faith to be able to continue going on our way, pushing ahead, making sure and making this world a godly place and a better place for all. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Wishing you the very best of happiness and health. And we should be able to see straight through to the time of the coming of Mashiach. May it be now. Amen. God bless you. Have a good Shabbos. We'll see you all on Monday, lunch break with the Rabbi.